say hello and welcome. It's great to see you all wherever you're joining from. If it is morning, afternoon, evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I'm Bruce Delmonico, Assistant Dean for Admissions here at the Yale School of Management. It's great to see you all for this international student panel. I'm excited to have four students joining us, taking the time out there. We were talking a little bit before, and they're got a week or so left of classes before final exams for the fall. So I appreciate you all taking time out, Pranjali, Matthias, Felix, and Eli, to join us and to share some of your experience, your wisdom about Yale and the School of Management. So the format for today, it's a wide open, it's a question and answer session. So we don't have a presentation, no PowerPoint, no talking points. The idea is really for those of you who are joining to give you as much information as possible about the school and about the experience to make sure you're as informed as you can be. For those of you who are thinking about applying sometime in the future, whether it's this year in our round two, deadline in January, or round 3 in April, or in a future year. It's never too early to start to do your research. My colleague Michelle Cirillo is going to be managing things behind the scenes. I have a few questions to start out with, but really we want to make sure this is tailored as much as possible to your interests. So please use the Q&A function to ask questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible. Michelle will again manage those questions and feed them along so that we can try and touch on as many topics as we can. And I'm trying to think what else. This session's being recorded. It will be available afterwards. We will be sure to send it out to everyone who was either on the session or who had registered. So that will be something that you'll have available to you. And I think those are the main things. So without without further ado, without belaboring it, I would love to just get going and start by seeing if the students, if you'd all be willing to introduce yourselves and just say a little bit about maybe what you're doing before SOM, what you're doing now, if you have any sort of post SOM or either internship or sort of employment plans lined up. I know it's a little bit early for that, but if you do, that's great. And I said I wouldn't cold call, but just for the beginning, just to get things going. Pranjali, unfortunately, you drew the short straw of being in my upper left and in my Zoom screen. So if you wouldn't mind starting, that would be great. Oh, shoot, sorry, Pranjali, you're muted, sorry.
Oh my God. Happy to go on first. So I'm Pranjali, first year student here at Yale SOM. I have a background in computer science. I'm from India. And before SOM, I was working as a specialist software engineer at one of the largest French banks, Société Générale, in their security services division. While at Yale, I'm still going through my core classes. I'm involved in a lot of clubs, the consulting, tech, hockey club. So happy to talk about it later. And post SOM, I think I'm looking at consulting and tech, but yeah, making headway there.
And Matthias, would you be willing to go next? Thank you so much, Pranjali. I always get the emphasis wrong. It's Pranjali.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Bruce. Hi, everyone. I'm Matthias. I was born and raised in Uruguay. I moved to US in 2017. So prior to SOM, I was living in Austin, Texas. I was working. Most of my career has been on supply chain management type of roles, different roles in procurement, logistics, different type of activities. I was working for a Latin American company from Austin when I moved to US. I'm a second year. I did my internship in Mattel, the toy company, in a supply chain program. But after SOM, I'm going to Dell, the computer company, the technology company that they are based in Austin. Austin was kind of like my priority to go after SOM, so it worked out. I'm happy for that. And what else? So in SOM, I have been involved in many clubs. Soccer club, the Alas club, consulting tech, different clubs. I'm even trying to help prospective candidates along this process. So yeah, I mean, happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Matthias. And Eli, would you be willing to go next?
Sure. Bruce, can you hear me? Hi, everyone. My name is Eli. So right now I'm a second-year student of Yale School of Management. Pre-MBA, I actually worked in New York City for multiple years, serving as a consultant at Ernst & Young New York office, which was much warmer than New Haven. My clients were mainly financial institutions, and I led teams to provide M&A readiness projects, helping the clients get ready for potential transactions, capital raising campaigns, or regulatory reporting, accounting requirements. So right now, this is my third semester in SOM, and I will be graduating in May 2022. In this past summer, I did 2 internships with one boutique investment bank, and the other one is with a consulting firm, both in New York City. So great experience and happy to talk further. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eli. And Felix,
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And hi, everybody. My name is Felix Benin. I'm also in my second year. I'm originally from Ghana in West Africa, so born and raised there, and only came to the US for my MBA. Prior to Yale SOM, I worked in public accounting, so I was an auditor in PwC in Ghana for some years, and I did 1 year working in Uganda, in East Africa, and decided to do a career transition. And so I came to Yale SOM. So like Eli and Matthias and everybody else, a couple more months to go till the program ends. This past summer, I interned in a private equity firm in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's called Nordcastle Partners. Post-MBA, I'll be transitioning to investment banking. So I'll be working with JP Morgan in their New York office. I'm engaged in a couple of activities in SOM. So from a career perspective, Finance Club, and then the Private Equity and Venture Capital Club. And I also co-leader of the Africa Business and Society Club and also the Christian Fellowship. So happy to answer any questions you may have with respect to any of these. And yeah, nice to meet you all.
Great. Thank you all for those introductions. That was really helpful, and really appreciate it. Love to jump into the questions, just get going and see how many we can get through. And I did see that there were, coming through the Q&A, again, use the Q&A to ask questions. I saw that there were a few that were application-oriented about unmarried partners applying together and sort of how we weigh the GMAT, GRE. I might try and touch on a little bit of that, but I would say that I want to make sure we're focused on the student experience as much as possible today. And we do actually have some upcoming application-oriented sessions, including this Friday at noon Eastern time. We have an application tips panel that I'll be leading that will really walk through the application and talk about all the elements of the application. So that, those kinds of questions would maybe better suited for that. And I would certainly welcome everyone to attend that session. We'll try and touch on maybe a little bit here, but really want to make it as student focused as possible. And I guess just to kick things off, going forward, not everyone has to answer every question, but if each of you could just briefly, you talked a little bit about your backgrounds and what you're doing here and what you're planning to do after graduation or for your internship. One question I'd love to start with is just why ultimately did you end up choosing Yale SOM for your MBA experience? You don't need to go into length, but just to sort of get things rolling, just to get a little bit of a sense of that aspect of your decision-making process.
Should we go in the same order? Or I can start. I'm fine.
Yeah, don't need to go. Yeah, so
okay.
Matthias, if you want to start, that sounds great.
Yeah. So in my case, when I started this process, I always had a couple of things in mind. I knew that for me it was important to be in a place where I felt some type of connection through my process of research and connection with the community. And on the other side, I wanted a place that I had a strong brand internationally. I plan to go back to Latin America at some point. And for me, that was very important. And with SOM, kind of like the name side obviously was always there. And it was one of my first choices, but I also had other schools. But I was lucky to be able, I applied first round before the pandemic. So I was lucky to be able to visit the school and connect like in person with many people from the community. And I felt a strong connection. I felt that this was a really good place to be. Everyone really cares about you. If you are putting the time on reaching out, everyone is really willing to try to help you and guide you through the process. And I really felt that this was a place where I belonged. Honestly, it was a very kind of like emotional type of decision for me.
I can just go next. So I think I would second Matthias's thoughts on the international student body that we have. There's so much diversity. I feel I'm learning new things every day. And the second reason for me was actually academics, the integrated curriculum. I felt I was coming in with 3 years of work experience, and I felt I needed a more robust, structured curriculum to get acquainted with all aspects of the business. And I talked to a lot of second years, and I really loved hearing their perspective on the organizational perspective course and just the team-based model of learning. So that was another point of consideration for me.
Maybe I can start. To me personally, the application process is based on my priority. The first priority for me is the location. I worked in New York City, and my priority is joining a school around New York City. So I applied around New York City, including the Manhattan ones. So that's my first priority. And then second, I think to me, joining an MBA program is like joining a community. So people is the most essential part of the community. So I focused on communicating and reaching out to those alumni or current students in the program, especially when I do not know them. And I was very impressed about the response from the Yale SOM alumni and current students, especially from those ones that I don't know. Because if you know a people, you certainly would be able to hear back. But if you don't know them and you reach out to them via like random emails or cold calls, that might be a different story. And I really appreciate the response and help from those Yale community members. So that's really the differentiator. And then the third reason is, as Pranjit mentioned, is the curriculum flexibility. So in Yale SOM, we're allowed to take the classes outside School of Management. So personally, I'm planning to take a history class next semester with the history department, which is the #1 in the United States. So I'm a big fan of history. So that is definitely a great fit for my personal interest.
Yeah, sure. I can go. Yeah, definitely echo all the points mentioned about the curriculum, strong curriculum. For me, I knew I wanted to go into finance, but as a business executive, I knew an understanding of how businesses operate and looking at businesses from different perspectives was really important to me. So organizational perspectives for me was a big thing. Secondly, I'll say the intimate class size. So Yale SOM has classes, cohorts that are relatively smaller. So generally speaking, you probably have about 350 people per year and divided normally into 5 cohorts. And so with 70 people in my class, and especially for the first year taking classes repeatedly, there's a connection that tends to build up. And I wanted the depth of relationships with my classmates, especially since the community is so diverse. I'd wanted to learn a bit about different cultures from all across the globe. And so that was very important. And also I'll say the people, because throughout the process, I reached out to people and I felt people were really genuine. They wanted to help me. They were really truthful and they exuded the community culture that was at Yale SOM. So I wanted to belong to such a community. So that's what's made it for me for Yale SOM.
Great. Thank you all for those responses. That was really helpful. I really appreciate it. Got lots of questions coming in on a number of different areas. I would maybe start with, you've each been in the States for various periods of time before starting the program. I think Felix, maybe you mentioned that you would come directly from Ghana to SOM for the MBA. But even though for those of you who had been in the States previously, is there is there, since this is a session for students from, international students who are thinking about getting the MBA, is there advice you have for how to make the transition and ways that things that you did that helped ease it or helped you kind of sort of blend into the new environment as the question asks?
Yeah, sure. So I could start. And so the good thing about Yale SOM is, as I said before, it's really diverse. And so there are so many affinity clubs available. And so for me, what I did was to reach out to the Africa Business and Society Club. And even when I was thinking about applying, and interestingly, they were really helpful. And once I got admitted, leaders of the club reached out to me, offered help. And a lot of these people had also been in my situation. A lot of them were coming directly from Africa for the first time. And so they directed me to all the resources. In fact, we may probably get to this later on, but I hadn't visited before. I didn't have the opportunity, like Matthias, to visit and all that in person. So somebody from the club actually helped me look for an apartment. And this all shows how strong the community is. So I think a really strong point is to reach out to whoever has similar backgrounds from you. And those club leaders are really helpful to answer all your questions. And they even connect you to other people if necessary. Yeah, so that was a strong point for me.
I can go next. Yeah, I think I echo everything that Felix said. Definitely reach out to people that have been in your same shoes. I think that helps a lot and will allow you to connect in a different way. But I will also say that be conscious about what are the type of industries that sponsor international students if you want to stay in US, to understand a little bit of like what's the recruiting process for international students. You don't need to know everything, but I would be at least a little bit prepared to what are the challenges that you will face. I mean, this is something that is not only for SOM, it's for any business school in US. There are some challenges and there is some extra work that you need to consider and some thoughtfulness that maybe other students don't need to go through that. I don't mean to create stress or anything like that, but always when you are prepared and you know what you're coming for, I think it helps. At least in my case, it helped.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. And actually, maybe picking up that thread, obviously, for the people who are the prospective students who are tuning in now, obviously getting an MBA, one of the a main reason is to advance your career, to either to pivot or accelerate your career. So that career piece, the recruiting piece, that is obviously critically important. Is there anything, Pranjali, I think you have less experience, less exposure at this point, but to the extent you obviously know that, I know the career services and the career development office process starts very early, like orientation or before. So you do have had this experience now, but for those of you who are, in terms of your internships or your full-time experience, is there advice, any things you would say or about how it unfolded that would be relevant to the people who are tuning in now? This may be especially from an international student perspective.
Yeah, maybe I can start answering that question. So to answer the question, I think I would recommend to do two things in the process of MBA application. First, keeping an open mind. Second, starting earlier. The MBA recruiting could be pretty intensive, and it could even start right before the start of the semester. So to make sure you have a head start, I would highly recommend to start early, to do the due diligence about investment banking, consulting, technology, recruiting, to get some basic ideas early. And then second, trying to keep an open mind. That means I know a lot of people would have the preference for certain career track, banking, consulting, tech, or PE. That's great, but there will be tons of information and new information showing up in every single day. So a lot of people, they would be interested in doing A, but ended up with B and that was a very happy result. So personally, I prefer to do investment banking when I joined the SOM program, and then in my first year experience, I've learned a lot, and through my internships in this summer, I actually changed my mind, which was actually surprising to me. I think more than likely I'll be going to a business consulting arm post MBA.
I can add a little bit to that. I think the CDO and the OISS have been great resources as an international student. The CDO is there for you whenever you need them, resume reviews, cover letters, coffee chats. I would be lying if I didn't say I was not nervous about coffee chats. So they are there throughout the journey. And OISS is, of course, there's the orientation that happens. They tell you about recruiting as an international in the US, of the US job market space. But also, like, if you have any questions on your visa status, or if you're allowed to apply to certain jobs versus will you ever require sponsorship, or all the nitty-gritty questions of that, they are so responsive. I've sent like mails at the night and I've received responses early morning. So definitely take advantage of the resources that Yale has to offer, the community that Yale fosters. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I could just add a bit. Yeah, I agree. There are so many resources available, and once you get admitted, even before you start classes, you start working on your resume, and you have help from career coaches from the CDO who would help you with resumes, help you with cover letters and all that. And so the process starts quite early, and it's important to think about it, but with the resources available, I'm sure it's okay. And there are so many also professional clubs, depending on which industry you are looking at entering in. And the good thing about these clubs is that they are led by second years who have gone through the same process in just the last year. So they have all the experiences, they have all the contacts, and to direct you in the right direction. Yeah, so.
That's great. Thank you so much. And as a quick follow-up, I did see one of the questions was very specific to Eli, asking about your 2 internships in your one summer and how you manage that. And it sounds like that actually made a difference in terms of your career sort of plans. You kind of sort of shifted. Is that, I guess, are the 2 internships common? How did that come about in terms of your particular experience?
Sure. So to answer the question, I did 2 internships sequentially, which means I finished my first internship in the middle of the summer, and then start my second one, and then finish around mid-August. As I've typed in the answer, it was a long summer, but doable. I personally really appreciate this experience because that really gives me a great window for test water to really learn the nuts and bolts of the 2 different potential career tracks I'm interested in, consulting versus investment banking. And then based on my experience, I could adjust my career goal accordingly. But it's definitely doable. And for international students, logistically, it's also not that difficult. What we need to do is applying for CPT twice with the International Student Office, and then let them know that you want to do 2 internships, and then they will handle that from there.
That's great, thank you. And I know actually that reminded me, there were a few questions about Silver Scholars, which I know is for those of you who are listening and don't know, it's a special program we have that's for students go directly from undergraduate to us here at SOM. It's a little bit different. Some other schools have what they call deferred admission, where you apply in your last year of undergraduate and then work for 2 years. For us, so you go straight. And the one thing, Eli, that reminded me is Silver Scholars, they do an extended 1-year internship. And a lot of times it's not just 1 internship, but they'll do 2 or 3 or 4 sometimes. I know someone who wanted to do investment banking and did a 3-month stints in sort of Asia, Europe, US, just to try and get some exposure and get a sense of comparing different environments globally. So that reminded me, your multiple internship summer reminded me of that, just as an aside. That's also maybe a segue. I know an important part of the experience here at SOM is sort of the international component, the global studies requirement and the other international opportunities. That was obviously disrupted for the pandemic. And I actually, I may, at the risk of kind of stepping into something difficult, like what has, I mean, last year we were, everything was virtual. This year's been hybrid. So, but more, I mean, last year was hybrid. This year's more in person, but still limited in terms of travel. What has your international exposure been like? And it's been disrupted. And what do you, I know we're going to be resuming the international experience trips in the spring. What are you looking forward to? Are you going to have a chance to do that international experience component?
I can start. I mean, I want to be honest. Of course, we probably had nothing like it was before, and hopefully people who's coming in the next couple of years are going to resume what used to be a huge highlight from SOM. I heard about the international experiences and all the global experiences that the SOM program involved, and people was like always very I don't know, proud about it, and that was something that was really important. Obviously, the pandemic it's out of anyone's responsibility. We had some experiences like global virtual teams where we connected with different people from the global network that SOM has, and we had some experiences and some courses that were really interesting. But I would like to mention about the international experiences that are resuming now. In my case, for example, this one is going to start to Uruguay, so I'm going to be a TA. So I'm really excited about that. But I know that it's creating a lot of excitement in the school, and many people is very eager to go back to that. But yeah, fortunately, we are not the best the best ones to speak about the global experience.
Sure, and then in terms of the international experience, we have not only the IE international experience, as Matthias mentioned, also the exchange program offered to students. I mean, that's tragic. We're not able to do that during the COVID pandemic, but that's definitely a very great experience. I'm originally from China. I did college in US and work in US. Personally, I plan to do the exchange program back in China in Tsinghua University, but because of the COVID, the plan got canceled. But that's definitely there. Actually, Yale is collaborating with multiple prestigious schools around the world, including Tsinghua, I think Renmin Daxue, University of Renmin, those great schools. So hopefully when you guys get into the program, you will have that options there. Yeah, it will be a great experience.
Sorry, I forgot. One of my good friends, he did the exchange with the HEC in Paris, yeah. And he's so thrilled, happy. He's having a great time. So that's also something that is a highlight I forgot to mention.
Yeah, I think we also got some schools in Europe like HEC and LSE.
I appreciate those responses. I know it's a very difficult thing to talk about. It's been, the pandemic is really, of all the disruptions that, the international, having to put those on hold has been a real challenge. And I do hope, it sounds like Matthias, you're going to be able to sort of TA trip, and the fact that resumption this spring hopefully is hopefully a sign that things are getting a little bit more back to normal. But I know that was a real disruption for you all in terms of your SOM experience. I'd love to maybe pivot a little bit. We talked about a number of aspects of sort of your time here at SOM. We didn't really talk about maybe one of the core things yet, which is the academics, the classroom experience. And I'd love to get a sense for you, and you've touched on in your responses in terms of maybe the integrated curriculum or certain aspects of what drew you to Yale for your MBA studies. But I'd love to, and it doesn't have to be necessarily the core, it can be any aspect, but any highlights for you in terms of the academics, a class, a professor, experience more generally that you think about and it kind of still kind of sits with you and resonates with you.
So I could start. And so I'll talk about two things. Number one, I'll talk about the flexibility of the curriculum. And so we have like different formats, and professors use which formats they think will be best to communicate the lessons. And so there can be lectures, guest speakers, cases, raw case studies, and all that. And so I like the fact that there's no confinement with respect to what professors have to use in order to communicate and to teach. And so that's really important for me. And also, one thing that I was pleasantly surprised about was the strong finance curriculum at SOM. And I knew from the beginning that I'd wanted to focus on finance, but when I got to my second year and had the opportunity to bid for classes, I realized there were so many finance classes and with so many renowned, like stellar finance professors. And so to give an example, I can name a couple of classes I'm taking: corporate finance, investment analysis and private equity. In 4-1, I took investment analysis, LBO, leverage buyout. I'm taking securities analysis and valuation, which is basically what equity research analysts do. So people in the class like pick an industry, form groups, and value the industry, and then pick like companies in the industry and also do the valuations on those. And so I've been really impressed by the strong finance classes here at SOM.
Thank you so much, Felix. Any other thoughts on that piece, the academic experience?
I can add more information. So we have two types of faculties. One is the industry practitioner. Then the second is the academic professors. I both agreed. And they could offer different resources. In SOM, clearly we have a lot of prestigious academic professors. In finance department, like we have Kelly Shu. In accounting department, we have Frank Zhang. Those are definitely great resources and to offer the insights from the academic perspective and the theoretical perspective. Meanwhile, we also have the practitioners like AG. You're going to learn that name a lot when you get into the program. It's a star teaching professor for the entrepreneurial track. Those practitioners, they have amazing industry experience in private equity, entrepreneurship. So they're going to offer like the real world experience and a lot of network opportunities and bring a lot of great speakers into the classrooms. So yeah, definitely different types of resources.
I would also like to highlight maybe the learning that happens in class from your peers. I think people in Yale come from a diverse range of backgrounds and they have so much to add. And just being there in class, learning from all these diverse experiences has been very enriching and insightful.
Yeah, also I wanted to add something regarding to that. I think that this one does a great job on meeting people who is really eager to learn and is very intellectual, curious. So you will always find a bunch of people that in each class that will be very passionate and excited about the class. So they will bring a lot of insight and resources and everything. Like it even happened in many classes that sometimes we were speaking about something and then they shared like in through Slack or maybe in the Zoom chat or whatever, like links or articles or things like that related to that topic. So you will find always someone who knows a lot about any of the topics that you are having in the class.
That's great. Thank you all for those responses. And Eli, your response on the entrepreneurship reminded me, we did have a couple questions about entrepreneurship. I know, I think your career paths are maybe more in sort of finance, consulting, operations. I don't know if you've had any exposure to the entrepreneurship curriculum. And if so, if you have any thoughts about that. I know that that's become an increasingly prominent aspect of the experience at SOM.
Yeah, what I could say is in terms of entrepreneurship, there are a lot of different types of resources in the program. I will just talk about roughly like two types. Type 1, entrepreneurial classes, which are mainly focused on aspirations, talking and interaction with the faculties and students to get some ideas about how to start a small business from ground zero, or how to start the business through acquisition of existing small companies. So those are the ideas and thoughts. And then second, to my knowledge, Yale is also offering the Thai Center, which is the accelerator of the small businesses. More information could be provided later, but that is actually sponsored by the prestigious alumni of Yale, which is named Joey Tsai, who is the boss of the Brooklyn Nets, the NBA basketball game, and the key founders of Alibaba. That is a very prestigious program, and in each year we got a lot. The current MBA students of Yale could submit application to the Thai Center, propose how they want to start their business, and they're gonna get selected. Once you get selected, you will get the funding and coaching about the how to run the small business since the very start. So that's a great experience and an accelerator.
Something I wanted to add there is that not only the incubators, the accelerators, and other resources, funds, all those type of resources that are great. Also, through my experience with electives, I took 2 electives this term, where some of the final projects were working with some of the startups from students to solve some of the problems. For example, I'm in a class that is listening to the customer, and the different startups from the students in the class would offer their project to solve a specific problem, and a team from the class that is learning different tools and things that are really interesting will apply all that knowledge to your startup. So you are kind of like using brain power from your classmates to solve a problem for your startup. And that happened with 2 classes this term. So I think that's really interesting how they connected both parts.
Great, thank you all for those responses. I did want to follow up on something. I think a number you mentioned, but I remember Eli mentioning sort of in looking at schools reaching out to alumni and the responsiveness of the alumni. And I want to there was a question more generally about how has the Alumni Network been helpful to you sort of in recruiting and clubs and other ways? Is there much interaction with the alumni? And if so, what has that been like, and how has that been helpful to you?
Yeah, so I could go. So for me, I leveraged the Alumni Network a lot when I was recruiting. And so I found that for a lot of the finance roles, networking is really very important, and which is something I had to learn as an international because I wasn't used to that a lot. And I found that the SOM community is really tight-knit. And so even from second years, introducing me to people in the industry, whether I was banking or private equity, people were just willing to talk to me to offer assistance and guidance, and also connect me to other people, which went a really long way to help me to recruit successfully. And so I found the community to be really like helpful and tight-knit and supportive of everything. And we have a document that goes around of who went where. And so we could go back as far as so many years back and to know who was an SOM so many years back, which industry they are working with, where they started, their career trajectory, their contact address, and people willingly give that information and are expecting that current students contact them. And so using that along with the alumni directory, and even going further to the broader Yale community, because SOM is really very much integrated with the broader Yale community, I've found that the alumni network has been really strong and supportive.
I think I would second that. While I was applying, I reached out to a lot of second year as well as recent grads. They were very helpful, always ready to jump on a call and answer any questions. While recruiting, a lot of tech recruiting is unstructured. So having an alumni base that's strong really helps to just get to know about the role and what are their expectations. And of course, I had to mention the Indra Nui Alumni Speaker Series. She recently came to the campus. We got a copy of her book. We got to listen her stories and how her experience was when she came to the US for the first time. So all these interactions make you really feel connected to the broader, not just Yale SOM, but to the broader Yale Alumni Committee.
Great. Thank you, Pranjali and Felix and others. And maybe as a little bit of an offshoot, I don't know if anyone has the perspective to be able to answer this, but there was a question about, is the process of looking for a post-graduation job in your home country different from a US search? And did you find it to be more challenging? I don't know if anyone feels comfortable sharing that kind of perspective, but if so, I certainly welcome it.
So I can say something about Latin America. It is different. I think when you're going to some of the big industries like consulting or IB, you can do it on the same side of US, because many of the big firms, they offer the opportunity to choose an office in some of your home countries or countries from your region. When you are trying to find other industries that maybe there could be like a smaller type of recruiting, it needs a different process. But the school gives us access to a couple of resources that are some programs. Going Global is one of them, and Exchange is the other one, I think. They consolidate different offers and postings, and they guide you how to navigate that process. So I think we have a lot of resources, but definitely outside of consulting and IB, I think it's a separate process. But we are pretty well supported. And just as an example, this year, an opportunity from Mercado Libre, it's a big tech company that is raising a lot in Latin America, appeared in CMS, that is the website from Yale. So I think that these things happened, but they are not so structured when you are outside of those two industries that I mentioned.
I just wanted to echo what Matthias said and add more information about the international recruiting. So the expectation and required skill sets for international recruiting or in Greater China area is definitely different from the ones in the United States. And with that being said, the Greater China Club, or GCC, in Yale SOM is offering career talks and training sessions for the students interested in recruiting in China or Greater China area or Asia area. I believe that there are similar resources in other international clubs in SOM. I personally is serving as the VP of partnership in the GCC club right now. So we are definitely organizing a lot of activities and events to connect the alumni, the very strong alumni group in China of Yale community, and then the current students on Yale campus. So last week we just had like a career session. We invited the senior managing partner of Deloitte Consulting in Greater China area to share the insights. I personally learned a lot because my work experience was mainly US based, and I didn't know that much about the industry trends in China or in Asia. And next week we will be having another career session, a career panel discussion, where multiple senior SOM alumni will join us virtually to share their insights about the Chinese economy. So I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful information. I really appreciate that. We have just maybe 5 minutes left. A couple more questions. One very specific one that came in, Felix, you had mentioned the raw cases, and there's a question about how that's different from sort of traditional MBA cases. And I don't know, you don't have to be, just because you mentioned, you don't have to be the one to answer, but if you or others want to maybe just briefly just give a sense of what the raw case method is like and how that's different from sort of traditional MBA case.
Yeah, sure, I can take it. So I think in a traditional MBA case, you have a document that narrates a story, typically will range from about 10 pages to about 15 pages or more, depending on the context. And a typical case will summarize all the information into one document and give it to you, and then there's a discussion based on that. The difference between that and a raw case study is that for a raw case study, it mirrors what you see in the real world. And so in the real world, when you are, for example, analyzing an investment, trying to make an investment decision, nobody gives you just one document and says that this is all the information you should consider before you make a decision. So a raw case study would have interviews, video interviews, for example, with the protagonist in the case, would have links to websites, for example, we'll have audio interviews. And so it's more mirrors what you are going to face once you graduate from school. And so there are several moving parts, and you get to get a sense of like a real world as opposed to like a more contained and summarized version of the facts of the case as presented in a traditional case.
Thank you. That's very excellent, pithy. We need to get you on the road for admissions. It's, I think you said it better than just about anybody else could have done. I appreciate that. Yes, with just a couple minutes. One, I would want to ask one last question about advice you have for candidates of preparing to apply. But before that, so that's just a preview for the last question. The penultimate question, the one before that, we talked a little bit about sort of the resources that exist across university, you know, in terms of the academics taking electives anywhere. Eli, you talked about SciCity, but we didn't really dig into kind of the opportunities that exist across the university, or even talk about New Haven more generally. So I guess maybe I would use that as an excuse to maybe ask about a particularly experience you had here at SOM that, you know, you think back on fondly, a highlight for you. And it doesn't have to be just it could be at SOM, but maybe it could be at SOM or elsewhere at the university, or even just in the community more generally. So just a quick highlight of your time at SOM.
I could start. So we had in-person orientation week, and we had a lot of events planned, like the East Rock hike, the treasure hunt across the campus. I remember specifically the treasure hunt because I was really excited about visiting the campus. I just seen SOM and a little bit of our Prospect where I stay at. So I really took the time to explore the college, and I was in awe. I remember standing in front of the Sterling Memorial Library and just looking up and be like, oh, I'm here. This is happening, especially after the COVID year that we have had. If you would have asked me like 5 months back, Pranjali, do you see yourself at Yale? I was like, I don't know. So just being grateful and cognizant of the challenges that the past year had presented, and being able to come here and make the most out of this opportunity. I think that was a moment that it really dawned on me. So definitely recommend visiting the Sterling Memorial Library. There's a big lawn outside. You can just have a picnic. You can, like take in the feel of Yale.
That's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I can jump to the last question. We're actually at time, so I should probably move things along and ask the last question, which is, to the extent, love to get just a quick thought from each of you on advice you have for candidates preparing to apply. Any last piece of advice for those of you, for the candidates who are applying maybe January 6th in our round 2, in April in our round 3, or even in the future year? I'm sure they're eager to know any thoughts you have.
I can start. First advice, I would recommend you to go through the student ambassador list and reach out to students, try to figure out what the different backgrounds and the things that each student has that could help you through your experience and give you proper advice. Anyways, you don't need to, if you don't find anyone with your expertise or background or whatever, don't worry, reach out. They will connect you with someone else. Myself, I'm there in that list. Feel free to reach out. I think that's very important and will help you through the process. And secondly, in my experience, my application with SOM was very personal. I really took a process of introspection and really tried to show who I am as a person, what motivates me to do the MBA, how my journey prior to SOM and post SOM, it's in my head, and what I want to accomplish. And I would recommend you to at least for SOM's application, be personal. Show who you are as a person. Show who is behind that application. I think that matters a lot. Not if you manage like $1 million contracts. Obviously, that's important, but it's going to be in your resume. That's my piece. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I can maybe add one more thing. So one recommendation I would have is doing the diligence, doing the due diligence for the Yale School of Management, and figuring out why you want to apply for Yale, because Yale would not admit a student who does not have genuine interest in the school and the community.
I would add 2 pieces of advice. First, I did my undergraduate in India. So applying for colleges in US is a little bit different. I think I got a lot more touch points to showcase all aspects of my personality. So try to enjoy the process. I know it sounds like it can be really stressful, but just having that, going through the different process, when I look back, I've learned so much from just applying and getting through the decision rounds. And second, choose your sources carefully, engage with current students, alumni, and people who know what they're talking about, irrespective of, there are a lot of different unverified sources on the net. Stay away from Reddit for some time. So just choose your resources very wisely. And finally, trust yourself. You've got this.
Nice. So yes, definitely bring your authentic self. So I agree with the comments before. And I think that's you have to understand that SOM is mission driven. And so as you tell your story, it's maybe important to see how your story aligns with the mission of SOM, which is very important. And one thing that helped me was to get a clear sense of why I would need an MBA and what I want to do with it afterwards. So I think it's nice to think about those things.
Great. Thank you all for those last thoughts. And I know we're a couple minutes over, and I know I think you might have classes to get to, so I might want to make sure to be mindful of that. I appreciate your time. So Pranjali, Matthias, Felix, Eli, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. Very helpful. We had tons of questions. We weren't able to get to all of them. I apologize for that. But your insights were really, really helpful. We do have, for those of you listening, thinking about applying round 2, we do have, and there were some application-oriented questions. I'm just going to post, we do have an application tips panel that's coming up this Friday, the 10th at noon US Eastern time that I'll be hosting. So if you do want to get more, be able to ask those application-oriented questions, please feel free to do that, to join us. It's about a month before the application deadline. In the meantime, I know Michelle shared the mba.admissions@yale.edu email address for those of you who have additional questions. Again, thank you all for participating. Thank you all for tuning in. Pranjali, Matthias, Felix, Eli, thank you for your thoughts. Good luck with the rest of the semester. Good luck in exams, and have a great winter break. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you. Good luck to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for organizing this, Bruce. Yeah, good luck.
Thanks.